All right. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're ready for this Wednesday edition of the Gareth Cliff Show live on the Real Network. I'm joined by the excellent and very powerful Jack Mutlante.
Good morning.
I hope you saw the picture that we put up on the
Jesus.
on the screensaver before we started the show of Jack wearing the dark glasses. Can you show that quickly?
And the necklace.
And yes.
Oi.
I mean, if you met that guy at a taxi rank, you'd know he was the boss.
Yeah.
Right? You met that guy. And by the way, if you bumped into that guy anywhere on the street, he'd ask for your phone.
Yeah.
Your wallet.
Me everything.
Take it off. I've got a gun. Don't mess with me.
Is there a size 7 shoe I see there on your foot? Take that off too.
Why you never give me?
Oh my God.
That's a great photo.
Listen, I sent James
you should
so
put that
many
in
options.
your ID because that's
Hell no.
Yes.
I gave James so many options and that's the one he chose. Like, I mean,
oh, I love
seriously?
it.
But anyway.
All right, everybody. Good morning. Let's get cracking. We have a lot to do today. I'm very excited because we're going to have an actual professor in the studio. I love Professor David Block. We haven't had him here for ages. And he says he has unbelievable, these are his words, unbelievable things to tell us about the universe.
That's amazing.
This morning. He says those auroras that we saw just a couple of days ago, he said they are unprecedented. So Prof Block is really firing on all cylinders. He's ready to go this morning.
Love it.
Join him. And then we will have Jonathan Ancer, who's written a book.
I love the title of it.
Yeah, the 50 lies that made South Africa. He's called it bullshit, which I love. So we're going to talk to him a little bit later on. And we want you in the comments section if you aren't already. I see Shani was up very early this morning. Good morning. At 5:56. Joe, we hadn't even started the show yet, and she's ready.
Yeah.
All right. MN's first time watching live. Yay. Well, you know what? The nice thing about watching live is you get to hurl insults at us. You get in the comment section. You get to praise. You get to add your voice. Your opinion gets heard. If you're not live in the comment section, you get to listen to the podcast, and obviously you get to judge everybody.
Yeah,
which is really all anybody wants. But but you don't get absolute control like you do when you listen live. Okay, so we got a lot to do this morning. There's a lot to talk about, and I thought the best place to start is probably. Okay, so I found this, which I thought would be quite interesting for us to look at. This is the Minister of Health. And everybody's been passing this around, so if you've already seen it on social media, I'm sorry. But I wanted to hear Jack's comments on this, and I thought you might want to share your comments on this. This is the Minister of Health explaining how great NHI is going to be when they never, but eventually get it implemented. So once the government has the most they can out of it and put it into their own pockets. This is, of course, if the ANC get their 50+1, which they probably will. I know everybody's very excited about the fact that they won't, but they probably will. Anyway, because we're a country that likes being abused. We're a country that we've got a masochistic tendency. Where
we do.
This is why so many people, they don't understand. People who've grown up in a household where there isn't abuse they don't understand how people who are in an abusive household keep staying there. They stay there. They're like, why are you allowing yourself to be beaten every day by your horrible husband? Well, this is why, because the husband says to you, oh, I'm sorry, yesterday was a mistake. I'll never do that again. And then they carry on abusing you.
Yeah,
that's exactly what happens with the ANC. Anyway, they're going to take the NHI. They're going to take whatever money they can. But the minister has assured us, and here he is in a most eloquent speech, explaining what the NHI is going to mean to average South Africans. Here we are.
Practicality, the question of practicality. Well, essentially, in practical terms, what you are saying is that moving forward, we want to start building a system, firstly, where all the citizens of this country will be able to be, they will be able to be on a reliable system of registration, and through which they can be able, once the system is fully operational, they can be able to go to various facilities. If you fall ill in a particular area, for starters, we'll have a portable system with your ID. We are also, just to mention among some of the details, that we're already quite advanced in terms of including a fingerprint, a biometric system through which we will be able to modernize even the health
What do you think of that one? I mean, very difficult. If you didn't have any sound, if you didn't hear that properly, it makes no difference because it didn't make any sense. What?
These people are supposed to be in charge. Like, what's going on? I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. So
Yeah.
I'm supposed to trust that man.
Yeah.
With
That's Joe. I
my-
think that's Joe Patla, who's the Minister of Health.
Right.
Oh.
I'm supposed to trust that guy with my medical needs.
When you're sick, he's going to pitch up with a biometric system and check your fingerprints and then give you an operation.
Hey, man. Like, good people.
Okay, but you know what? There are people who just really do believe that this NHI is a great thing. I see lots of them. If you go into the stupid retardistan world of Twitter, you will see exactly what I mean. There's people like, yeah, finally, free healthcare for me. Yes, he's struggling not to say we are looking forward to stealing this money. Ha 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 ha. Well, that's where I appreciate Jacob Zuma, because you knew. He was very honest about his intentions.
Yeah.
You could see he was like, I'm not into this governing thing, this making shit work thing. I'm going to take as much as I can. And at least he was honest about it.
Yeah. And
I like that. I appreciated that. By the way, got a comment here from somebody about the picture behind me. MN says, I can hurl insults. Awesome. We all love Mandela, but the poster behind you looks like you're campaigning for the ANC. Now that's actually, I've got an original painting at home that's exactly like this. That's the inspiration for this one. It might even be by the same artist, but they found this version online. But I've got that picture at home, and I don't have it at home because I support the ANC. I have it at home because like a lot of Americans have a picture of George Washington in their homes.
Some of them have Ronald Reagan in there.
Sure, Ronnie. Well, well, nothing wrong
and
with
truth
that.
be told, of all the leaders that we've had in this country, I think Mandela is like upper echelon. Like he's in fact,
No, he was the best.
He's like
And
the best of the best of the best.
I mean, that's why we still make a fuss and celebrate, and
Yeah. I mean, he ushered us into what was supposed to be the most beautiful era in this country.
we don't have to defend him here.
No, we don't.
History is
We don't.
already writing the story, and he will not be a footnote like so many of the presidents.
Unfortunately, his little minions that are left are going to continuously pillage
Oh my God!
and
Hey, you
plunder
realize-
all of our finances. Like it's terrible.
You realize this time next week we'll be going to vote.
Yeah.
We won't be doing a show on Wednesday next week because it's a pubic holiday, and I know a lot of you will not be bothering to wake up because a lot of you couldn't even be bothered to register. So you're going to have the day off on Wednesday. It's a reward for people who are extra lazy.
Just ungrateful little.
Yeah.
I don't know what. I can't find the right word this morning, but they were just ungrateful little something.
But we'll
Fill
be
in the
going to
blank.
vote. I was
Yes.
at an event on Monday morning at a company, and the CEO said, "You're all going to vote next Wednesday, aren't you?" It's like, because I'm going to check on Thursday. And I'm like, good. Maybe
Yeah.
we should do that.
We should.
Start telling people, if you don't come to work on the Thursday with your thumbprint with the ink, then we're not talking to you.
We really not.
So what we will do is we will do a Burning Platform special on the Podcast Party SA YouTube channel, which if you don't know how to find this by now, because now you should be settling into the new rhythm. Okay, so let me go through this carefully again. People
For
just
those
don't get
idiots
it.
at the back.
Okay, so first things first. This is the live show right now. This show's on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay, on the Real Network where you are now.
Mhm.
So if you found this, shop. Then we've got the Burning Platform, which you'll find on the Podcast Party SA, different channel. And the reason for that is that they do separate things. Okay? So that's important. You need to know that. And it's on all the apps like Apple and Spotify and all the rest of them. You can look for the Podcast Party account, subscribe there. And African Analysis, which you've come to know and love with JJ Cornish, will also be under the Podcast Party now. All you need to know is at podcastparty.co.za. And here's the guy who's running that. So
it's really simple. It's not that hard, guys. And
right.
We've been putting together a lot of panel discussions. For those of you that have subscribed to Podcast Party, you know exactly what I'm talking
about. And Jack has his own show there.
Yes, sir. So it's called The
Jack,
Middle Child Talks.
If you like Jack, there's a whole lot more of him. So you know what? We're giving you a smorgasbord of options here this morning.
Listen,
that's what we're trying to do.
It's a Sunday with a cherry on top. You know what I mean? It's all good. It's delicious. Come here. Come here.
Jack, who in the opening picture of the show looks like a Squatani.
Listen, subscribe to Podcast Party SA or I will find you. How's about that?
Okay. I'm not settled into this new rhythm, says Gavin. Well, you know what, Gavin? Things will change. Yeah. And frankly, with the election next week, we're hoping things will change. Because if things stay the same, it's not such a good thing, frankly. Mm-hmm. Why does Jack look like Snoop Dogg on today's GCS cover photo, says Sanele. Fuck bus.
Man, because I'm still within the energy of the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, okay?
Oh, wow.
Still within that.
I had someone explain that to me on yesterday. Yesterday was Tuesday. Someone explained the Kendrick and Drake beef, and I still don't understand it. But isn't this all to do with egos?
To a certain extent, yes.
Because as I understand it, someone said there are three great kings of rap at the moment.
Yes, sir.
They are Drake, Kendrick, and
J. Cole.
And I'm okay with all three of those being on that list.
Yeah.
I have no problem with them. Drake doesn't get involved in a lot of the politics or the social movement.
Not at all.
The cultural stuff that is, that's a little more contentious, let's say. And Kendrick has a problem with that because Kendrick's like part activist, part rapper. And I don't understand how. So what? He's going to drag Drake into issues, kicking and screaming when Drake doesn't want to be in issues?
Not really. It's like,
you explain it to me.
It's similar to someone using a particular culture to make money off of it, but they don't address the issues that come with that culture. I think that is
like rappers
the root of it.
Rappers have any room to move on that front.
No, I think of all the people, I think Kendrick Lamar is the one guy that can actually say that. His last album, which was called Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, is essentially a therapy session that all of us should have. Whether you've been through traumatic situations or not, there are a lot of gems in that album that would make one look at things in a completely different way. Whereas Drake, for argument's sake, just makes you wave your hands and dance.
He just talks about girls and clubs and music and fun and
popping pills and all of this shit.
But we need both.
We do.
I don't want to be proselytized to or put into therapy while I listen to it.
Reverse. What was that word?
Proselytized.
Okay.
That's what people used to do. The missionaries used to go out and proselytize to people.
Okay.
So when they went and converted like some very happy tribe of African villagers who wanted nothing to do with it, they like forced Jesus down their throats. That's proselytizing.
Okay.
So what Kendrick is doing here, and I love Kendrick Lamar. I have from the very beginning. I've listened to a lot of, not all, but a lot of his stuff, and I found it all to be really, really well put together. The guy he's very talented.
He is.
But there's a time and a place for all those things. And I don't need lectures on mental health and society and social ills and the family and politics all the time. It's like sometimes you want bubblegum bullshit.
Yeah, sure. And
Drake fulfills that role and Kendrick fulfills the other role. So, both of you just carry on.
For me, it comes down to time and place. There's a time and place for Kendrick's music and there's a time and place for Drake's music. I think, as you mentioned right at the beginning of this, it comes down to ego. And what we can tell is that Kendrick's ego is a lot more talented than Drake's because they both put out 4 songs each.
Right.
In the space of about 2 weeks. And the general consensus is that Kendrick Lamar won.
Well,
and I'm also of the same opinion.
I'm happy about that. I really I didn't have a dog in the fight, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that that the beef's now over.
Yeah, no, it is.
So we can all move on, because God knows that was stopping me from working. I didn't do 8 hours of online meetings yesterday because I just couldn't concentrate with the beef still going on.
Yeah, I was actually surprised
So
at how
relieved.
involved a lot of people were. Like at some point, on YouTube, like every single video that popped up, outside of the things that we usually do, everything was a breakdown of Euphoria, breakdown of Family Matters, breakdown of this.
Let me
I'm
tell
like,
you, I love the comment section on this show. JP says, luckily Gareth didn't make understanding this beef seem too white. Hashtag proselytize. Tell me, JP, honestly, did you have to look up the word proselytize? Tell the truth.
Be honest. Come on. I legit
Did you have to
just
look
asked,
up how to spell it?
Yeah, I asked Gareth. Like the moment he said it, I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is next level English. I don't understand that.
All right. Well, if you have a suggestion, by the way, let's actually put this to the audience. You notice there's a little bit of space there above the TV, which says the Real Network. What should we put on that shelf? Anything you can imagine. We'll put a shelf above the TV there so that we can fill that space in, because it's irritating me. What do we put in there? You can choose. It's got to be long and thin. So anything. We could put a giant penis in there if you want to, because I know our audience are sick in the head.
Yeah.
We could put a snake. We could put a lizard, my favorite animal.
That's interesting.
No, it's not my favorite animal.
Oh, wow.
It's the one animal I really don't like. If you got a suggestion, no, I'm serious. Like, people want to have a contribution to make on the show. Forevermore, whatever lives on that shelf will be whatever you suggest, and we'll choose a winner.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, really.
And go nuts. Like, you're limited legitimately by your imagination.
Poor Yaku and Marvin and James and the team, they're going to have to put something else in there. But I think it would be fun.
No, but they live for this stuff. Don't you, James?
Yeah, James loves that.
Yeah,
James is, yeah.
Loves.
Okay, so a running counter of how much has been stolen through the new NHI. That's that would be funny.
That would be
I have to animate that very quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us know if you've got an idea of what should go up there. We'd be happy to put something in there that the audience has considered. All right, so a couple of things that you wanted to talk about this morning, because I know you've got an agenda, and we've got Prof Block coming in. We've got some other things. You wanted to talk about the solution to crime. Have you got a solution to crime in South Africa?
Honestly,
really?
It's no, I don't. I've got a couple of ideas. Okay. So Bafana Modise,
Yes.
who does Manifesto Unpacked at
Yes.
the podcast party, he had a interview yesterday with a representative from the UDM.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy kind of echoed some of Gayton McKenzie's sentiments. So longer sentences for crime.
Right.
But the one thing that he put across that I actually agreed with was a death sentence.
Okay, so this is such a complicated issue, and I've discussed this. I remember I was in law school when State versus Mokwanyane was all the rage.
Yeah,
that was the case that the Constitutional Court heard, where they decided to abolish the death penalty, and they found on constitutional grounds that we should no longer, as a country, have the death penalty. This is one of those situations where I think more than 70% of South Africa was in favor of the death penalty, because we really hate criminals in this country, and with good reason. We've been terrorized by these motherfuckers for how long? Right? So South Africa, you ask the average South African, we do a poll, you're going to find that most South Africans are very much for the death penalty. They want to see criminals being executed. It's also a little bit of bloodlust. There is a part of crime and punishment that is about retribution, that has less to do with rehabilitation and therapy and trying to fix people. Some people you can't fix. Someone who rapes children, you can't fix that person.
Yeah,
I don't care what you say. Someone who kneecaps people with axes and who beats their wife to death. Those kind of people, you can't really fix them.
See?
So they probably should be killed. I'm in favor of that. But you know what? I'm not on the Constitutional Court. And this is what all of us have to realize, is that the Constitutional Court is there to interpret the law. The law is the Constitution, which was a foundational document of this country. We as the people may decide that we want to at some point have a plebiscite, a referendum about the death penalty. Until that happens, I don't think we've got any chance of changing the law because the law is now interpreted, written. The highest court in the land has made its call. And they said, by the way, that the main reason that they don't like the death penalty has to do with human dignity. They said, and there's a part of me that agrees with this, why should the state be allowed to kill people? Because if the state is allowed to kill people, then it can also kill people for the wrong reasons.
But I agree with you on that. I just think if the process is done in such a way that the guilty are more likely to be killed than the innocent.
That's always the case, although there are always going to be a percentage of people
They are.
who get, put down, for lack of a better word, wrong. It's an injudicious process that ends them up in the gallows.
And look,
and how are we going to do it? Have you thought about how we would do it, by the way? Because that's always more interesting to me than whether we would do it or not. It's like, what do we think?
Lethal injection.
You think lethal injection's the way?
Real quick. I mean, they were handing them out, calling them COVID vaccines. But you know what I mean? We'll just
controversial this morning.
put him there, and then
Okay.
connect him to some sort of a chair and anesthetize whatever the fuck.
Okay.
And then let him or her go to sleep. Because I think the one thing that has escalated crime in this country is how easy it is for people to get away with it.
Yeah. And frankly, I don't think our prisons are nice. I've been in one or two of them because we did shows from there. And they're not pleasant places. I'll give you that. But I don't think anyone going to a prison in South Africa is going to get out and be better.
No.
I think they are absolutely, positively going to get out and be worse.
Yep.
There is no way that anyone goes to a South African prison and goes, yeah, I've learned my lesson. I'm now going to be a good member of society. They get out of there and they're like, right, I've learned all the horrible stuff.
Right.
Now I can implement it on these unsuspecting people.
I lived with horrible people. And as they say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. If your friends are horrible, you're ultimately going to be a horrible person.
Horrible.
Just horrible.
That hits close to the bone for many people. Like a horrible friends. MN says in the US states where they have the death penalty, crime is still high. It does nothing to reduce it. Crime is a complex issue. That's true. But I think a lot of South Africans just want to see these people who are absolutely unrehabilitatable, if that's even a word. They want to see them put out.
Yeah,
I want to see them removed from society. That's all.
That's it. That really is it. Because if there's a harsher penalty for doing the wrong thing, then you might stop a couple of would-be criminals from even crossing that line.
I really do believe that the one thing that keeps bad people, including politicians, from doing the one thing that could keep them from doing the bad things is if they see their friends paying a price, like an ultimate price.
We whip him in the town square.
Look at how quickly everyone went quiet after Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula was suddenly arrested.
Hey, Gareth.
Like suddenly the ANC was like,
have you ever seen cockroaches when you switch the light on?
that is one hell of a comparison, a metaphor.
Listen.
Okay, so let's just see here quickly because there's some very good suggestions. James, people are suggesting huge erection says above the TV. What about a taxidermied animal of some kind? Like what? What would fit in there? Like a genet, or a civet, or some sort of small predator? What kind of animal would we put in?
In fact, the dinosaur might be great up
it's
there.
It's too small for a dinosaur.
No,
it's too small.
Just put a.
Pete says it's okay if some fall through the cracks and we end up putting some innocent people to death. He's like,
Yeah, well.
Listen, it's like, for example, a lot of murderers kill perfectly innocent people. That's not ideal, but
not at all.
If we don't do something with the murderers, we're making it even worse.
Exactly.
How about a shambok? That's long and thin. That could live in that shelf. Maybe a shambok. We'll have to see. It could work.
You know, Gareth, when I was growing up, whenever my friends and I would do something very stupid, whenever we'd get a hiding, they'd say, I'm going to say this in Sotho, meaning you only listen through flesh. See what I mean?
That's right.
So
this all goes together with the theme of like punishment.
Seriously, some people just don't get the message until they get hit over the head with it. You know?
Mm.
Yeah, like Kendrick Lamar says, I'll whip your ass and hide the Bible if God's watching. That's the kind of
I'll whoop your ass.
Yep. Hide the Bible if
Uh,
God's watching.
Carla van der Vesthuizen says, gee, a long time ago you had a rant about the lack of accountability on the continent. If you look at the hero worship that dictators receive, it's even more true now.
Mhm.
Well, I saw the UN had a moment of silence for the Iranian president who was killed in that helicopter accident. And by the way, yesterday, Monday, Siv and I were having a conversation about this because it was still breaking news at that point. And people were saying, ooh, Israel. Israel has no interest in killing the president of Iran because he's totally replaceable. It changes nothing in Iran. The Ayatollah's in charge. And
it's like a revolving door.
Yeah, it makes no difference.
People.
So all they're going to do now is put the deputy president in where the president was. So nothing changes there. But I cannot believe that the UN Security Council had a moment of silence for this despicable, deplorable, hideous man who was in charge of Iran, supposed nominally in charge of Iran. This guy was a reprehensible human being. You know, when Osama bin Laden was killed, the UN made some statement. The Secretary General was like, well, the world is rid of one more horrible person. It's a good thing.
Come on.
Now we're having moments of silence for these guys. It's absolutely appalling.
No, but the world is upside down. You've got people that are part of the LGBTQI plus whatever, and letters are added,
Don't throw them in with
protesting.
Iran. They'd never make it in Iran. They wouldn't last a day in Iran.
I mean, they're going to pro-Palestine, what's this?
Rallies.
Marches and rallies and whatnot. It's like, okay, do you know what? How about you catch a plane to any one of these countries
Yes.
and try wave that flag?
I
the
agree.
updated one is absolutely disgusting, by the way. But anyway, try that nonsense. Go to Iran and try that nonsense. Let's see what happens.
Jeremy says we should put up a no more bullshit sign above the TV. That's a good idea too. Okay, we're getting some good suggestions here.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to talk to an author called Jonathan Ancer a little bit later on. This is his book. Speaking of bullshit, no more bullshit. This is called 50 Fibs That Made South Africa. And he's cleverly used like the chappies, the inside of the chappies.
Did you know?
Do you remember that?
Yep.
I loved those things.
I love those things
Oh,
too.
man. I think I got at least a tenth of my general knowledge from the inside of chappies papers.
Yeah. When general knowledge actually
When it was
used
a
to
thing
matter.
people used to listen to.
Yeah.
Well, it is time to turn our attention to much more important issues. And I'm thrilled that this morning we have with us none other than Professor David Block, who is an astronomer who's devoted over 40 years to encouraging audiences around the world to always look up. And he is our guest this morning. Prof, it's so nice to see you. How are you?
Oh, I'm looking up in awe and wonder. How are you, Gareth?
I'm delighted to see you. Now, Prof, I've been meaning to talk to you for the longest time about these aurorae that we all got to see.
It's quite staggering.
Now, this was even visible in places like Knysna.
Places like Knysna, Gareth.
People in Knysna, I thought they just took drugs. They probably did too. but they must have seen these aurora and thought, wow, what is going on? Finally, the end of the world has come.
Now, there were some newspaper headlines saying that it's the strongest aurora in 500 years.
My goodness.
And I'll explain why, but it is quite incredible. I was in the Arctic in March, and the views of the aurora were it is beyond special. I cannot begin to describe. And especially, when it's so strong that it literally almost rains down upon you, the lights.
It's incredible. I mean, Prof, we actually got pictures from people who listened to this show who went with you on your trip.
Oh, good.
To the Arctic. And I mean, pictures don't do it justice because obviously we don't have 3D, and you can see that happening in the sky in 3D. So it's a whole different thing.
Absolutely.
Why were they the strongest in 500 years? Why does that happen?
So this is very interesting, is that every 11 years, the sun goes through a period of intense activity. It's got a solar maximum and a solar minimum. So the sun continually spews out very high energy particles such as xenon and krypton, forms what we call the solar wind. And so every 11 years, you have these ejections of particles reaching an intensity. But what happened here was terribly interesting, is that you had CMEs.
Yeah.
Those are coronal mass ejections. I mean, this is on a de la grande scale, where the sun literally, it's like peeling of an onion effect, Gareth, and you've got these huge bubbles of writhing, seething hydrogen gas,
Prof, those must be some of them as big as the Earth.
Oh, much bigger. No, much bigger. These coronal mass ejections, that one flame on the sun at solar prominence can be 40 Earth diameters. These are really gargantuan bubbles, if you like. And so what happened was 2 weeks ago, there were a couple of CMEs, and the sun ejected these coronal mass ejections. And of course, it takes a little time, but then it follows the magnetic field lines of the Earth, and it strikes the regions towards the North Pole and the South Pole. So normally you would see the aurora only from the domains of where I go in the Arctic. But because you've got a CME, a coronal mass ejection of such intensity, it starts lighting up interacting with the atmosphere far closer to home. And that's why you could see it not only in the Antarctic, but coming right through to, for example, Gansbaai, I'm told, or Nice.
Prof,
it is unheard of.
So what you're actually seeing there is our atmosphere protecting us.
Absolutely. If we didn't have that's exactly right. First of all, you've got the magnetosphere, the magnetic shield around the Earth, which protects us. And then you've got the Earth's atmosphere. And what happens is the particles stream into the magnetosphere, they come into the Earth's atmosphere, and then they start colliding with atoms and molecules of oxygen and nitrogen principally. And then that's where the fireworks happens. You look up and sometimes you see red and sometimes you see blue and often green, as you've seen on my pictures. I sent through a whole lot of pictures.
Show some of those pictures of the aurora, of the...
Those are my photos of the aurora.
Where did you take these? In the North Pole?
So I took those in right up in a little set of islands. It was very interesting, Gareth. Your show is so famous that a lot of the people in my group actually said, we're coming because we heard you on the Gareth Cliff show.
That's amazing.
We will. Are you going to do another one of those trips?
Yes, I'm doing one in February because we have to capitalize on the fact that the sun is so incredibly active.
Absolutely.
Otherwise you'd have to interview me in 11 years' time.
So where were you in Norway, in the Lofoten Islands or something?
Exactly right, the Lofoten Islands. And if anybody's interested in coming with me, I don't know if you want to mention my website.
Sure. I think a lot of people want to go.
I'd
love to go.
It's just www.davidblock.coza.
There we
And
go.
there's a little contact button, and I'll leave it to you to do the rest. Your
Brilliant.
magic.
That is
But
amazing.
from the Lofoten Islands, you're pretty close to the North Pole. And you're just in a sweet spot. First of all, a sweet spot by day, exquisite Norwegian beauty. But then by night, I've had people over the years, from radiologists to businessmen to gynecologists to lots of medical people, and everyone just says when they do see it, if the skies allow, it's just that wow kind of experience.
It's the greatest show you can get.
Yeah.
I think so, and it's literally just by looking up. But the reason I do the tours is there are multitudes. There are thousands of Aurora tours advertised, but many people do not get to see the Aurora. I, as a prof, know where to go. I can't guarantee that you'll see them. If there's cloud, for example, you won't see them.
Sure.
But I think each one of us, Gareth, needs to be instilled with a sense of awe and wonder. We've often discussed this, of looking up in wonder.
So, Prof, first of all, Monica says she loves your tie.
Oh, thank you,
And
Monica.
Gail says your passion is infectious. It very much is. That's one of the reasons we love having you on. So show us some of these pictures, and then the Prof can tell us what they are. Put up the Aurora, for starters, because he's already explained that to us, James. You got it there? There's James messing around. Come on,
Okay,
1 second. You think we've got all day? I'm sorry, Prof. These producers are very incompetent. I don't know what. Oh, there we are.
Look at that.
All right.
Now,
So,
you took those pictures.
so these are a collection of pictures from different photographers. I've
Oh.
taken some,
Okay.
not these two. I didn't take these two, but we'll be showing
That's
some.
incredible.
But for
Stunning.
example, just look at the dancing purple and greens. But the intensity is so high of the light that they reflect in the cold Arctic waters. Can you see that?
Unbelievable.
There's a green hue. Imagine the whole landscape lighting up. On the
Wow.
right, you can see that too, a mountain, and then it looks as if the aurora are actually, stemming forth from the mountain.
But Prof, it looks like if I were a primitive person
Yes.
of 500, 600, 1,000
Yes.
years ago, primitive,
Yes.
but I were an uneducated peasant in medieval Europe, and I
Yes.
saw this. I think I would imagine that was a dragon,
Well, that's very interesting, Gareth.
that
because
green one.
in years gone by, they were regarded as representing the spirits of departed soldiers who had died in certain of the wars, like the Viking Wars
Right.
and so on.
Mm.
So when people saw Halley's Comet, I think it was in 1066 at the Battle of Hastings, many people were so petrified of Comet Halley that they actually
Yeah.
thought the end of the world was drawing nigh. And you can imagine seeing sights like that right in the sky, a battleground of departed spirits and many other myths besides that. But I would say, and as you know, I've traveled the globe using some of the world's largest telescopes, but to me, nothing on Terra Firma beats the aurora just in terms of the wow.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So tell us we talk about primitive and silly, stupid people. There were all these Americans who were stupefied by the eclipse that happened there
Oh,
just a
yes.
short while ago. Now,
Yes.
I mean, I can understand, ancient Mexico where the Aztecs were the medicine men and the astronomers
Yes.
there who they were smart people.
Right.
They knew when the eclipse was coming, and then
Right.
they would gather the people and tell them they'd behaved badly and that the gods are going to take away the sun.
Right.
And then the sun would disappear and they'd all immediately shit themselves. And then suddenly they'd say, no, the sun's back. And it's because of your offerings and it's because of your
Yes.
loyalty to the king or
Yes.
whatever else. And it worked like a charm.
Yes.
Columbus
Now-
pulled the same trick, didn't he?
Columbus pulled the same trick, I think.
Yes.
But the Americans in the year 2024,
Mm.
I mean, you had a lot of them who were completely dumbfounded by the eclipse.
It was a very emotional moment for me. I was invited to address a group of folk in Texas,
Mhm.
in Austin, Texas. And we were battling with a cloud the entire day. But at the time of totality, I suddenly saw the clouds dissipate. And I suddenly saw the moon start kissing the limb of the sun. And I just waited there. Liz and I were watching, my wife and I, and we were just watching.
Uh-huh.
And then what happens is the temperature, of course, drops and it starts appearing as if night is encroaching and the birds start flying home to their nests. And it's quite dramatic, my wife took some pictures of a tree in front of us and you could see the tree brilliantly. It was broad daylight. But then during the eclipse, you could barely see the tree. It was like as if night had impinged upon us. And I think to people who've never seen a total eclipse of the sun before, it is magnificent for one
Yes.
reason. Once you've got totality, it is safe to actually look at our closest star with a naked eye. Before that, you need special glasses.
Yeah.
Right.
But at the point of totality, the moments of totality, when the moon eclipses the sun, you can actually see solar prominences, flames leaping out from the surface of the sun. You can actually see the corona, the blazing atmosphere of our closest star. It's a very emotional moment. I remember, you of course have heard of Clem Santa. His wife came on one of my trips to see an eclipse of the sun, and she said nothing has made her cry like that.
How
because
amazing.
it's just so emotional.
That's beautiful.
Mm.
Prof, I do want you to see this. This is a video that I found this online. Apparently a young girl in Portugal
Yes.
put her phone down while it was recording
Yes.
to record herself. She was with some friends or whatever. She ended up, perchance, catching a meteor
Yes.
as it blazed across the sky in
Yes.
Portugal. It's the most incredible footage. Just take a look at this, because this is beautiful. Watch this. Sky lights up, and there it goes.
Wow.
Oh, my
Just
goodness.
incredible.
Oh, wow. That is just so stunning. Was that taken at the time of the eclipse, during the time of the eclipse?
I'm not sure. I think that was at night,
Yes.
and I think it was during.
I see.
Yeah, it was during some. There was obviously some meteor shower that occurred, and she
Right.
managed to just perchance catch.
But I think
that.
that's one of the beautiful phenomena in the night sky is, of course, we'll be showing some James Webb images in a moment, but just the beauty of the night skies and of the meteor showers.
But that's quite something to
themselves.
catch, right?
Oh,
It is.
yeah.
Oh, it's
But
beautiful.
it's possible if you have your cell phone handy. They strike the Earth more frequently than you would think. Of
Really?
course, we've got what's called meteor showers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you have multitudes of meteors coming in. Fortunately, very few ever strike the Earth. Those would be called your meteorites. But I think that's quite stunning footage.
It's lovely, huh?
indeed.
All right,
Yes.
let's look at some of these pictures from the telescope, because the James Webb telescope.
Yes.
I remember when they started sending photographs back, you were very, very excited.
I was.
Now, what have we got going on
So
here?
now just look at this. I mean, if this doesn't drive you wild, one belongs to working at AvBob. I mean, just look at this. This is a embryonic solar system, a solar system in the making. The star at the center would be representative almost of our sun, but this is another star, but we've blackened it out because it's so bright. And then on either side of the star, AU microscopii, you've got the plane, or a plane of gas and of dust, and a solar system can form within that plane. So you're actually looking at the birth of an embryonic solar system.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
You know, as I say, that is wild stuff. I mean, to see the birth of a solar system actually happening before our veritable eyes here at the Real Network, it is, I mean, this is just the stuff dreams are made of. And these are all extremely recent images. When I was invited here today, I said, let me bring the latest images for both of you
And Prof,
to enjoy.
what is the scale of this that we're looking at?
So you can have a look at the scale at the bottom. An astronomical unit is around the Earth-Sun distance. So you're looking at... You're looking
9.7 AU.
That's correct. So that would be an AU is 150 million kilometers times 9. So it's really comparable to the size of our solar system, smaller but comparable in terms of morphology.
Huh.
Wow.
Okay, well, that's quite a picture. And the fact that we can get that, I remember when the black hole picture came out.
Yes, wasn't
You-
that amazing?
You sent me a message, and I mean,
Yes.
we'd never seen.
No,
we
no,
only
no,
could
no, that
theorize
was-
about
no.
that before,
But what
right?
was also very interesting, I brought with something called the Pillars of Creation.
Show us the pillars of creation.
The Pillars of Creation are absolutely, there we
Oh,
go.
yes.
This now
It's a nebula, isn't it?
Nebula, yeah.
nebulae. Now at left, you've got a view through the Hubble Space Telescope, and at right through the James Webb. And you see, what do you see? You see these writhing blue stars shining at temperatures of 50,000 degrees centigrade. You know, you see the ultraviolet radiation impinging upon what? Columns of cosmic dust. And you and I, if we had to pinch ourselves, we are made of the stuff cooked inside the interiors of stars. We're
Yep.
made of carbon-based stardust. So they've dubbed this Pillars of Creation. But I think, you know, with, again, your title, The Real Network, this is the real thing
Wow.
through the eyes of the
I mean,
James
it looks like
Webb.
it could be the hand of God. You know?
Absolutely. It is just absolutely
Extraordinary.
mind-blowing. But then, of course, there have been the most awesome images of very deep space. I'd like to just show your audience, if I may, the
Yes.
gravitational arcs, where you've got light bending in arcs over a time
You
span
got to be
of...
patient with James. He has no idea.
Oh,
what
there we
this
go.
is.
There we go. Now, this is extraordinary, is that light from a distant galaxy is bending as it comes to the Earth it approaches other galaxies and clusters of galaxies, and the light actually bends.
Well,
With
that's the bending of space time, which Einstein
that's correct.
proposed
That's
all
right.
those years ago.
That's
So you can
right.
actually see as it approaches things of great gravity,
That's right.
it bends around.
That's
them.
right. I think that is stunning. You know, Einstein, as you correctly say, predicted this. It was established and verified at the total eclipse of the sun in 1919. But there's an image which I want to show you with a whole lot of these arcs.
Yes.
If they could bring this up.
Oh.
It's got a whole lot of these
I wouldn't hold
orange
my breath of the producers. They don't know what any of this is.
arcs.
To them, it's all
No.
completely confusing.
Yeah, we're all in
But,
class
but the
right
point
now.
is that you're looking back nearly 13 billion years in time in this image I want to show you with the gravitational arcs. You've got clusters of galaxies, and then you've got all these arcs around.
Well, we're waiting with bated breath for James to see 13.5 billion years into history.
So as you can
So this
see,
guy can hear his brain melting in the production
Yep.
booth.
maybe my
James,
son
any luck?
Nathaniel
He's sweating
will help
bullets.
him
Yeah.
to select the gravitational arcs.
But
But
not a drawing, James, an actual photograph.
that's right. We want an
Right.
actual image.
You know, people, scientists have spent their life trying to get this telescope up and running. That's not it.
No,
That's not what we're looking for.
That's we're looking at an image where you've got lots of galaxies and then dozens of orange arcs. There we go.
There, that's
Oh,
So,
my goodness.
I mean, just look at this. So you're looking back around 13 billion years in time, and all those arcs, the orange arcs that you see, is the deflection of light from a distant galaxy. If you had to take a spectroscope, you'd see that they match. In other words, this is proof of Einstein's theory of general relativity, and as you say, Gareth, of curved space-time on the grandest of scale. But I wanted to notice something. We are able to probe the universe to more than 13 billion years in time with the James Webb. And every single fuzzy patch that you see there is a galaxy.
Prof, that's almost to the very origin of the universe.
Well, that's right. The Big Bang is about 13.8.
Yeah.
The microwave, the cosmic microwave background radiation is about from Big Bang to around 300,000 years. So we're literally pushing our observations to the very birthings of
do
our
you know
cosmos.
in that previous picture, Prof? Do you know what that big blue-white star in the middle is?
Let's have a look. So that would be a foreground star in our Milky Way galaxy, known by some numerical number, not any.
Oh, it's not one that we would
It's
recognize.
not. No. Here we are literally looking back, as I say, billions of years in terms of the background image, but the foreground image, that would just be a bright star, but not very bright at all in the Milky Way galaxy. But the reason it looks so bright is because of the sensitivity of the detectors in the James Webb.
I've never
Space
asked you this before, but when you go out and look up, as you tell us to do,
Yes.
and you're right to do so,
Yes.
do you look for a particular constellation? Is there a set of stars that you're most drawn to?
It's a very interesting question. I think different areas of the sky interest me at different times. For example, there's the Rosette Nebula, and that's a stellar maternity ward, gynecological, the birthing of stars. And when I've gone to Chile to use the large telescopes there, I would spend my time, for example, on the Rosette. But then other times, like when I've worked in Hawaii, that's been beautiful. I've observed galaxies that are very close to my heart. So
And Hawaii would be a good place because there's less light pollution.
So Hawaii is one of the best places on the earth for large telescopes. And the reason is at Mauna Kea observatories, when you're driving to the telescope, you drive above the clouds.
Wow.
So you go in your 4x4, and I think you're around 4,200 meters or something of that order.
Right.
So it's extremely high. You're above the clouds, so the air's crisp and pristine. The only problem, Gareth, is that some of my colleagues do need oxygen at that level.
Of course, old professors.
You know, no. you know, people a quarter my age. You know what I mean? Sometimes, yeah, I've had people say to me, "Hey, Prof, where do you get all this energy from? I'm exhausted. I can't breathe." And they're 20 years old. So no. It depends on the excitement of the moment, Gareth.
I always like to look for the Southern Cross because it gives me direction, as in the compass direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, my favorite constellation has got to be Orion.
Oh, yes.
And it's easy to find in almost any night sky, even where there is a lot of pollution.
Absolutely. It's very easy to find. Orion is magnificent. You've got just so many famous stars in the constellation of Orion.
Betelgeuse.
You've got Betelgeuse. That's right. You've remembered very well.
It's the biggest star we can see with the naked eye, right?
Betelgeuse is just this enormous.
How many times bigger than the sun?
It would be hundreds of times larger than our own sun. It is absolutely gargantuan. You've got Betelgeuse. You've got Messier 42. There's the rosette. There's the rosette.
Wow.
That's my picture. That's a 3-hour exposure using some of the world's large telescopes in Chile, in the Atacama Desert.
That's beautiful.
And thank you. And I mean, just look, you're looking through the stars at the Milky Way galaxy, and you're looking at, now, the baby stars have been born inside that central bubble. You see that central bubble?
Right.
And so the baby stars are clearing away the environs of their stellar cocoons, and you can just see writhing, seething, young embryonic stars emerging and clearing their cocoons. That's one of my most famous, perhaps, images, the Rosette Nebula. Now, for that, I would have traveled to the Atacama Desert in Chile and spent probably a week in total securing an image like
Is there
that.
anywhere on Earth that you still have to go to see what you want to see?
I think that, my eyes, it's a very good, a brilliant question. I've been to Hawaii. I've observed from Hawaii. I've been to Chile. I've observed it. Of course, there are still large telescopes, but I've been privy to use some of the best telescopes on terra firma. And now our attention is turning towards space.
Yes.
So the James Webb Space Telescope is behind the moon. So that's where our attention these days is focused, is not so much on Earth. I mean, the earthly telescopes, those on Earth, give the most phenomenal images.
Prof, sorry, they've just put up a picture of the Carina
look at
Nebula.
that. Oh, I mean, just look at that. Now, this is an image from the James Webb Space Telescope. This is the Carina Nebula, MGC 3324. And so what you've got there is, Gareth, you'll remember that many years ago, I was one of the astronomers who cracked the code for cold cosmic dust. And here you'll remember that. And here you've got cold cosmic dust just seen almost face on. You've got cliffs of this cold cosmic dust. And the relevance for you and me is that Gareth is made of carbon-based stardust. But again, you can see the clarity of the James Webb. It was only launched on Christmas Day in 2021. It's now behind the moon. But that's where a lot of my attention today is focused.
There are a few people in the comments, Prof, who were asking about the SALT telescope that we have here.
Yes.
Have you used that one?
So that telescope I have not used. I generally go for infrared telescopes, large infrared telescopes. Many of these are found, for example, Hawaii has got some excellent detection. SALT is really a spectroscopic instrument by and large. So I have not used SALT for my studies. I have used space telescopes for my studies on cold cosmic dust. Our research has been featured on Nature twice. Gareth, I'm still apparently the only scientist on the continent of Africa whose research has twice been featured on the cover of Nature.
Fantastic.
So I'm very excited about
you should be very proud of that. We are. I think it's amazing.
The James Webb Telescope, as you said, was launched a couple of years ago.
2021.
2021. How how has the images it has generated, how much more information have we gathered in comparison to the Hubble?
Yes, no, I think the point there is that with Hubble, we could never go to a distance of a redshift. We could never, I imagine, seeing domains of galaxies almost at the very birth of the Big Bang. That is absolutely phenomenal. The James Webb has taken us orders of magnitude further. Hubble did well, but Hubble, even with the pillars of creation, you could see there was, here we really, there's something very interesting. The universe starts off in a Big Bang. And then it's flooded with electromagnetic radiation or light. We call this the radiation-dominated epoch. Then eventually the universe starts cooling down and galaxies start forming. It's those galaxies, only around 300 million years old, which is nothing on the scale of 14 billion years. Nothing. I mean, 300 million years to see galaxies in the making, to see protoplanetary systems in the making like AU microscopia. We are able to literally hold on to the cosmos right almost at its very beginning when stars and galaxies started forming. It's taken us into a completely different domain. It's like tickling the entrance to the Stagfontein caves,
Wow.
And then suddenly you go in and you see Naledi, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
These are different orders of magnitude. That's why some nights I can barely sleep.
It's a great thing. I think it's absolutely
amazing.
wonderful. All right, so Prof, are there any other major events that are going to happen in our skies in the next couple of months?
So the only real major
because we've been spoilt this year.
We have, very much so. I would say, and I'd like to alert all your listeners to this, is that, and people are missing this, the one major the driving factor in my mind is the sun, which is just writhing, seething, sending aurora to northern France. I mean, domains we've never, ever.
Just by the way, how long do we still have with the sun before it starts to expand and take us in?
So there's no real cause for alarm. We can still grab a coffee. The sun is going through perhaps not quite midlife crisis, but the sun is around 4.5 million years old, and it has we're halfway. So the sun has another 4.5 million years to go. And I think left to the politicians, they'll do a good job of destroying everything long before 4.5 billion years is up.
Yeah.
But that's what's actually most exciting to me is, yes, we've been so spoilt with the CMEs, with the total eclipse of the sun and so on. But that's why I'm, focusing on the aurora.
We've got a question here from Ken who says, aren't these pics manipulated, as in people put colors into them because they're infrared, not as the naked eye would see them?
So the pictures that I showed you today and that we showed you are not infrared pictures. They're taken with, in fact, Gareth, quite a number of your followers used mobile phone technology. They just held the mobile phone up. It is true. I have to say this. It is true that these mobile phones or sophisticated cameras like I might use, Nikons or Canons and so on, will show you details in the aurora, which you can't see easily with the naked eye. But, it's interesting. Some of my group members, one lady in particular, Roma, could only ever see white when she came with me. She saw the dancing curtains, but colorblind in a sense. So that can happen. And different eyes have got different sensitivities to colors, but the ones that you saw now dancing over France and Iceland and so on, those colors are real. Very little enhancing is required to actually see them. In fact, to see them, you can see them with the naked eye. That's the incredible thing about the aurora right now. And I think that's what's happening in the sky right now, which is just so exciting, is the sun really about to maybe eject more CMEs, and I'm really hoping that more will, come to Norway.
Is it possible to, and I will suggest to people that they go and visit your website, davidblock.co.za.
Yes.
And they can go and line themselves up for the next
absolutely.
trip. But is it possible that the sun could eject such a large coronal mass that we might have our electronics knocked out by it?
Oh, that's a very, very interesting question. Now, apparently, a lot of the satellites owned by Elon Musk, the electronics had to be switched right down and off. Because these particles can create havoc as far as electronic grids are concerned.
Well, they've got charge on them.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. So apparently a lot of the satellites belonging to his company had to be shut down until the CME, the dangers passed. And yes, I mean, in days gone by even, it can create havoc with radio systems, with communication systems. And the interesting thing with the CME, Gareth, is they are so unpredictable. We know the sun is increasing in activity as I'm talking to you, but when there'll next be a CME, when
Nobody
that happens, nobody knows.
Because the sun is unpredictable.
That's absolutely correct.
And any chance that we could have really terrible radiation that could affect us and give us all cancers or mutate us?
That's again very interesting, and the answer there, I believe, is no. Fortunately, we have two in our favor. We've got our atmosphere, and then protecting us is the magnetosphere.
Right.
And so these particles don't just zap in onto the Earth, but they first have to follow the magnetic field lines of the Earth.
And those are generated at the poles.
And those come into the Earth at the poles.
And therefore, that's where you see the aurora.
Exactly true. It's only because of these gargantuan CMEs that we've been able to see them further north and further south. You see, Gareth, for example, at the Antarctic, there are no hotels at the Antarctic. So that's why you normally just don't see them unless you're resident at the Antarctic.
And the northern ones are called the Aurora Borealis, and the southern ones are Australis.
The Aurora Australis. But the intensity of the CMEs, the coronal mass ejections, was so high that you could start seeing the Aurora Australis from the domains of Southern Africa, which is really, in my lifetime, completely unheard of. And the Aurora Borealis, you could see from the UK. There were sightings in London. There were sightings throughout the USA. I mean, this was a celestial firework display of the absolute grandest of proportions.
Epic proportions.
Well,
epic.
I'm sorry it's taken us so long to get you in here, Prof, but you've got to see our new studio. And now
I love your studio.
And now
I
you've
think
seen,
it's just awesome.
You know that when you come, you can bring pictures. I would suggest you send them to me rather than James, because he doesn't know what to do with them. And then we can always get them ready for you in time. But Professor David Block, it is always one of my favorite things to have you around. I'm just so pleased that you are here in South Africa to help all of us understand things that we see in the skies. And I wish you luck on your next adventures with all these people who are going with you on these tours. I'm sure they come back with their minds blown.
But the interesting thing is, the moment they look up in awe and wonder, they say, but I originally heard, because we always follow Gareth, Cliff, and his show. And so you are far more famous, Gareth, in the Arctic Circle than you might realize.
Well, that's what I was always aiming for. That's all I wanted.
But I must congratulate you on an awesome studio at the Real Network. It is going to work magic with future astronomy slides.
I'm delighted. And remember, as Prof. Block always says, no matter what your age, you should always
look up.
There we go. That's us, 7 o'clock. We'll be back in just a moment or two.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
But then you can see the inklings of Chery's design over there. The slim headlights, massive grille, and then just imposing stance, as we can see. And this is the hybrid version that's going to be coming to South. It's earmarked for here, along with the Tiggo 9. So this hybrid also, 1.5 liter turbocharged. And this one this is actually going to be one of the most powerful Chinese cars that's coming out at the moment. So we are looking at the likes of, I believe, 400 odd kilowatts and 900 Newton meters in an SUV like that.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
All right, we are live. The Gareth Cliff Show on the Real Network this Wednesday morning. It's a week to go until the elections. If you aren't registered, it's too late. If you're lazy and you don't care, it's too late. Well, it's been too late for you for a long time.
It has been.
And the politicians are still going to try for another 7 days to impress you. And after that, they will stop caring about you completely.
Yep.
So get ready to be ignored by the politicians 1 week from now.
Don't even worry. On the 30th, you won't have electricity. So
I hope
Good luck with that.
you're wrong. I really do.
I hope so too.
Oh man.
I imagine if there were any people from the ANC that were watching the first hour, when they saw those aurora lights, they were like, load shedding solved. Just bring that here.
I'm very pleased we got to have Professor Block in our new studio because it also gives us a chance to put to use those excellent pictures of his.
Yeah.
Which before would have been difficult to do. But it's just part of like the whole visual experience. So I can only say to people who are still not on the YouTube that you are missing out. That's all.
True.
Of course,
Very
the podcast is still great and you can listen to that wherever you are. And you can always watch it later on if there's something that you did want to see. That's what makes it useful, is it fits in with your life.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to you having to bend your life around us. So a funny story, well, I think it's funny. Apparently, Soweto residents want assurances from government that they will not loot the NHI. So I don't know how they're going to get those assurances. I mean, I know what that means, but apparently community members raised their concerns about the NHI during the election town hall in Diepkloof on Tuesday. And I don't know what they said, but the ANC's Nzwandile Masina was booed by the crowd when he assured them that implementation of the NHI would be smooth. They just started booing. All he's doing is saying, we're going to implement this smoothly. And they're like, boo, we don't believe you, boo. He said, if you look at the fiscus on an annual basis, you can tell the ANC can be trusted. I think I would have booed as well, actually.
Yo.
There are a number of things that we have been able to do. Yeah, you can number the things you've been able to do because it's one hand. Maybe 3 or 4. Anyway, he insisted the chances of the scheme being riddled with corruption would be slim.
Where?
As he urged Soweto residents to trust the ANC-led government. You know, the ANC used to be proud to go into Soweto and say things.
Yeah.
It was like where it all started. There's a huge amount of history there.
Mm-hmm.
You live in Soweto.
Yeah. And
people there feel like there's a connection. Well, so that's some fun that went down over the last day or two.
My dad's house is actually in Diepkloof.
There we go. Did he go to the meeting?
No. He doesn't waste his time with frivolous things. Like if he needs to be lied to, he should just call me and ask me how was my day. Oh my goodness, what a waste of time.
Well,
and like if you ever needed an example of a dead mile, there you go.
Rebellious Ruth says, it's so sad. If you don't vote, the numbers work against us and still count as default to allow the incompetence of this government still in power. Still believe people don't know how it works. Ruth, that was obviously written in a hurry because I know you're not stupid, but you sound illiterate in that comment. So I'm going to give you a chance to rework it. Congo Chris says, NHI has just scaled up COVID PPE. Boo, the ANC, boo. Yeah, I think that's about right.
Yep.
All right. Well, listen, there's other news. Apparently the Japanese are sick of people taking pictures of Mount Fuji.
Wow.
Yeah. A Japanese town has mounted a large mesh barrier at a popular viewing site for Mount Fuji on Tuesday because they want to deter photo taking by an growing number of tourists. Japan's most famous site, Mount Fuji, can be seen for miles around. But the locals of a place called Fuji Kawaguchikiko, I think I got that right.
Yeah,
are fed up with streams of mostly foreign visitors who are littering, trespassing, and breaking traffic rules. You know what? I don't blame those people. Because nobody in that little town, Fukichawakuchiko, I didn't get it right that time.
It sounded a little Mexican.
They're a bit annoyed because these people come, they litter, they make a noise, they smoke, they drop their cigarette butts, they ruin things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be pleased.
I wouldn't be pleased either.
I'd chase those people out.
When you think about
And
it,
it's
like,
mostly people who want to take a selfie with Mount Fuji in the background.
yeah, and
Oh, bullshit.
when the point of visiting a place is because you have some sort of love for it, or at least
You would
you
think so.
appreciate the
Yeah.
fact that it exists, right?
Right.
So why
Yeah.
don't you follow, like when in Rome, guys, follow the rules. It's not that difficult. And
I
the
hope they know. I
Japanese-
hope there are no South Africans who are going and embarrassing us. there.
oh, please don't
With the
do that.
Japanese, you were saying?
Yeah, with the Japanese, those, I mean, it's baked into their culture to live in a certain way. The way they behaved at the most recent World Cup, after celebrating, the people in the crowd and the players cleaned up after themselves.
Yeah, right.
Why don't you understand the basics of a country's culture before you go there and just
And ruin
do
it.
whatever the fuck you want to do? It's ridiculous.
Parking illegally, ignoring the smoking ban. They would cram pavements to shoot the snow-capped mountain, which soars photogenically into the sky from behind a convenience store, residents said. Workers began putting the black netting up on Tuesday. By late morning, they were already done. Again, Japanese efficiency.
There you go.
Record numbers of overseas tourists are coming to Japan, where monthly visitors exceeded 3 million for the first time in March and then again in April.
Wow.
Okay.
Those are massive numbers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you know what?
especially, a bunch of ungrateful idiots who are going to trash your place. Yeah, you don't need such. You really don't need such.
Have you watched the interview with Cyril on 702 EWN? He lied for a full hour, the scumbag. It's from Carl.
I saw a
A
clip.
full hour of lies.
No, I saw a clip where he was trying
Did they
to.
challenge him? Who was interviewing him?
I just saw the clip. I haven't seen the entire thing. I saw a
Oh.
clip, in fact, this morning where they were asking him about whether or not he was thinking about retiring, where he had a couple of years ago, where apparently Figile Mbalula and the likes had said, yeah, they had to convince him to come back. And he's like, no,
Yeah.
I don't remember that. And you know
Oh,
how
boy.
Cyril deals with things. We addressed that issue. That means they've dealt with it. No, not that they've actually done anything. We just addressed the issue. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen it. I don't know if I'll watch it because it sounds like if they let him just lie for a full hour without challenging him, what's the point?
Yeah. who
What's the
cares?
point, right? Who wants to hear that?
Ultimately, I don't think that they're going to tell us the truth ever. So sometimes I feel like having a conversation with some of these people is a genuine waste of time. They will always toe the party line. They'll never
Yeah.
tell you the truth. So, hey, why waste your time with them?
That's what they're good at. We also got a video from listeners of ours in London who lined up to vote. This actually got Sivan Gessi was on a group, he said, when he was here on Monday. He said he was on a group of a WhatsApp group or Facebook group or something with all of these other voters voting from overseas. And he said it was beautiful. That the group has grown from something like 20,000 to over 70,000. And these people lined up. Just show that video of all the people lining up around the block in London. Hey. See the queue go on for 1,000 years. But well done. And thank you very much to, let me just check who it was who sent this to us because I want to give them a little shout out. It was Lindy who said, an update on our event, or rather how our day went. We arrived at 12:30 to a hell of a queue. So great to see so many South Africans making the effort. I'm sure most of those people registered to vote overseas and were there today. We were told it would be 6 hours. It really didn't feel like it. We chatted, made friends all around us. Someone went to buy wine, South African wine, and we proceeded to finish 3 more in the queue. I tried to get a Mexican wave going, but I think some have been away from home too long and have forgotten how. and then she says Msaga.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Msaga at the end. Make
There,
South
love
Africa
it.
great again.
Love it.
Very good.
Tell me you're South African without
that's handy.
telling me you're South African. You need wine to stand in a line to vote. I love it.
Yeah,
I
now
love it.
here's something funny. And we'll show this video in a second. This is Musi Maimane. Have you seen his new ad?
No, I haven't.
Okay, well, I got to give credit where it's due because it's always nice to let the politicians get a little bit of kudos when they do something right.
Oh, I thought you were about to piss me off. Okay, this
No,
is
no,
gonna
no,
be
no,
fun.
no. It's not going to upset you at all.
Okay.
And you know, Musi Maimane, at least let's give it to him. He has kept his sense of humor. Because
okay.
here's his ad. He basically builds like a Jenga tower for South Africa, but corruption is written on one of the bricks. And he says, this is one of the problem areas. We've got to get rid of corruption. So show the ad and then
Every
we can
country
get to
needs strong foundations. But in South Africa, our foundations have been destabilized by corruption, crime, and failing education, all of which leads to high unemployment. South Africa needs change. Leaders who will build from the ground up, end crime and corruption, fix education, build a better future for our children, and ensure there is a job in every home. I'm Musi Maimane, and your vote will build one South Africa. Hi, Suka Cyril.
Yes!
Hey, Suka Cyril. I love that. I think that's
It's
very
the
good.
code switching for me. He went from, businessman, JSE, South Africa.
Yeah,
Has,
and
the
you know,
problem
people have
with-
had a go at him because he goes from like serious private school Musi
Right.
to like, hey, what are you talking about? And here he used it to his advantage.
I
So
love it.
yeah, maximum listen to me, maximum respect to
Here's the
Musi
thing.
for that. I like it.
I'm so sick and tired of people pointing out like, yeah, you talk this way when you're with this person. Listen,
People
you are not the same person with
No.
everyone that you interact with.
I would never swear around 80-year-olds.
Come on.
Right? You're just going to upset them.
Yeah,
They're not used to that.
exactly.
So you tone it down around the 80-year-olds.
And I love the fact that I'm multilingual. I whenever I get the opportunity to speak in a different language, I jump at it. Because like certain things, there's certain phrases that you just can't say in certain languages. Like
Absolutely.
yes, sis. You get. Can you?
I use that one a lot.
You do.
Yes, sis.
I mean,
It's different to Jesus,
You know what I mean?
which is different to the others. I'm
Exactly.
not going to like kill the lily.
There's a certain feeling to it. Like, look, I can understand. For argument's sake, swearing in English,
Uh-huh.
it kind of feels a bit too proper. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like shit. Okay. But when you say masepa, you know what I mean? It's got a thing about it. So I love the fact that Musi, decided to go into a bit of code switching. That it was
Yeah.
perfect.
I mean,
It was
Carl DeSantos
perfect.
says it's brilliant. Well done, Musi. And he managed to use his white voice and his black voice.
You see, a true man of the
Yes,
people.
true man of the people. Good
Yes,
for him.
sir.
Cook says, I really worry when I hear interviews with randoms on mainstream media and they say they have lost faith in the government, so they're not going to vote. They clearly don't understand what elections are about.
You give it.
But look, we'll have this conversation, but it's the last week of talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
So after the, I'll be honest with you, I'm looking forward to not having to talk about politics every day.
Yep.
Congo Chris says that ad of Musi's is offensive. It's wrong to make a building fall over after the George building. Moan, 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 moan.
Congo Chris. Too
Yeah.
soon. Too soon.
Australia, astrophysics having a go here. Australia sucks. I can't believe the country with the second most South Africans makes it so hard to vote here. Well, of course they do.
Australia is
about
making
you voting,
everything
yeah.
difficult these days.
Okay. Well, very good. Listen, we're going to talk to author Jonathan Ancer. Don't worry, I haven't got something in my ear. I need to be able to hear him. He's on the line. Hello, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Gareth. How are you? Yeah.
I can't
Good to
hear
be
you
seen
guys.
by you.
For some reason, he's not coming through on my. earpiece that you just made me put in for no good reason.
I'm also wondering why I have it on if I can't hear him.
Yeah. I'm going to have to switch this on, otherwise I won't hear him at all. And this thing is dead. I don't even know if you've put batteries in it. Producer James, this is Jonathan's book. It is called Bullshit, 50 Fibs That Made South Africa. And there it is. That's terrific. I'm very, very pleased that you've written this book because there's a lot of bullshit in South Africa. I'm sure, just like us, Jonathan, you are thrilled that the elections will be over in a week from now and that we can finally move on to more interesting subjects. But obviously, this is a good time to talk about bullshit because the politicians are responsible for a huge amount of that bullshit, aren't they?
Absolutely. There's so much bullshit, so little time.
In fact, I feel like they should be paying those environmental taxes because the amount of bullshit that's flying in the air right now.
Come here, James. Sort this out. Doesn't matter if people see you.
In fact, they should see.
Watch, he's going to have to change the batteries. Watch. This is so embarrassing. We just thank God we had Professor Block in here earlier. They did. Is that what the problem was? You didn't check the batteries?
They had batteries.
Yeah. Listen to this. Such incompetence. This is bullshit, Jonathan. That's what I'm talking about. All right, now
That's the
very
first
good. All
good.
right, so tell us, listen, there are 1,000 reasons why you would want to write a book like this, but you obviously have, and I'm delighted that you did. Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire, 50 Fibs That Made South Africa. Where did you even start when it comes to this? Our history is so riddled with bullshit that it must have been a major, major expedition back into the archives to find the earliest versions.
Yeah. So it was some of it is tongue in cheek, some of it is lighthearted, some of it is quite serious. So it's a wide range. But I first had to decide what is a lie, what is a fib, and I started with the sort of obvious ones about kind of Shaka, which is a mega myth, and the empty land theory, and then moved on to sort of my own brushes with bullshit, going to Felt School. And learning about the Rooi Gevaar and the Swart Gevaar in 1985, and being packed off. My mother sent me with a packet of raisins, and then in case I got hungry, and then I had all these lectures about the Swart Gevaar, and we had to stand guard duty, and we were warned about terrorists coming across the border. And there I was standing guard duty with a pocket of, a packet of raisins in my pocket, thinking, what the hell am I going to do if a terrorist comes? And, I hope he's allergic to raisins because that's all all that I've got to defend myself. And so and then I did look at a lot of political lies. 100 years ago, we had James Barry Munich Herzog telling the Cape Coloured community that he's going to give them the vote if he gets elected. So this was in 1924. If he gets elected prime minister, and of course he gets. And so in his honor, they had a tartlet which they filled with apricot jam and covered with coconut. And in his honor, they named it the Herzoggy. And of course, he came to power in 1924, and of course, he betrayed them. So then they covered the Herzoggy with brown icing sugar, and it now became a symbol of somebody who's two-faced because it has these two coatings.
Well, we still eat those in some places, don't we?
We still eat them,
Yeah.
and every time we munch into it, we're munching into a century of betrayals and lies and bullshit.
So I just want to go to number 2 and number 4 in your book, because these are big lies that we've heard in the last little while, and people will remember these. Back in 2021, the decuplets. Do you remember we were told that we had someone who gave birth to 12 children?
Wasn't it 10?
10,
It's the
12,
10th.
I can't remember. They lied so
They
much
just
that it
getting-
kept growing. But there was a story, and I remember it was the Pretoria News that broke that story, right? And it was uncovered very quickly to have been nonsense. Pieter Ambedi.
That's right. Yeah, I found fascinating about that story and others like it is how the people who were lying just kept lying. They just thought, well, we'll just keep lying our way out of this lie, and it just became so outrageous. The Gauteng department was now trafficking, involved in human trafficking, and there was a big conspiracy here, and they just double down, and the other, I suppose it's like the fire pool lie with Nati and Gleko telling a room full of journalists that a swimming pool is a fire pool, but saying it with absolute conviction, and everybody knew he was lying. He knew he was lying. The journalist knew he was lying. He knew the journalist knew he was lying. It was just one big lie fest, and yet he stuck to his guns. And I suppose the worrying thing about the Pretoria News is that it was the editor of the Pretoria News who was actually telling the lie, and it was a whole newspaper. So the credibility issues come into it when your news source is responsible for not only sort of telling the story but inventing the story. Then I think we've got problems.
I remember the premier of Mpumalanga was a guy called Ndaweni Mahlangu, who once said famously that, of course, I'm going to lie. I'm a politician. And we renamed him Lies Mahlangu after that. But it didn't affect his popularity in that province at all. It seems that he was quite proud of his lying. And you bring up in one of the chapters here about the Guptas, how that turned into a very complicated set of lies. Now we look back and we go, oh, well, this is what was happening. But at the time, we were very confused.
Yeah, I think there was always a suggestion that we knew there was an attempt to corrupt the corruptible president. I mean, it started with Shabir Sheikh, and I think there were question marks, and it really started with the whole the landing at the Waterkloof airport, when we suddenly became a little bit cautious, suspicious maybe about what was going on. But suddenly this whole thing unraveled, and it became very clear that they had formed a shadow government, and they were calling the shots. They'd captured the country, and they'd captured the president. And, through a very, very clever, shrewd white monopoly capital campaign, with elements of truth sort of mixed into the kind of propaganda.
Well, I mean, we eventually heard, didn't we, from the then finance minister, Malusi Gigaba, when his wife went to court, that he had gone to Saxonwold to collect bags of cash. And I mean, it was clearly a shadow government, and these guys were making the important decisions. Yeah. Now we look back on it and we're like, oh yeah, the Guptas, they were bad guys. But many people forget some of the details in this book. That's why I'm glad you've written it.
It's almost as if we have to wait a couple of years for someone to tell us, oh, by the way, this is the truth, even though in the moment we can tell that this is just bullshit, which is what I would like to find out from you, Jonathan. Were you surprised by any of the lies that you dug up?
I was, yeah, no, absolutely. I was also surprised at some of the things that I'd forgotten, and you might be too young to remember it, but in the 80s there was this big scam where this guy from Gareth kind of turned out to be a sort of a rogue. Was sort of started a pyramid scheme where he was selling what turned out to be nonsense, but it was ointment for women that he told everybody. Yeah, it was exactly that. But it was frothed milk. And what he did was he got people to harvest this milk product, send back. They had to pay 500 Rand for a starter pack, and then send him back envelopes with this harvested milk, which he then claimed he was turning into the secret compound that was being sold overseas called Cleopatra's Secret. And of course, the first couple of people who were part of the initial starters got money back, and they told their friends, and they told their friends, and soon the whole country smelt like frothed milk. And he took people for millions and millions. People lost their pensions, their savings, all by trying to harvest what was called Quibus, this scam, and it's sort of gone down in history as one of the top 10 scams in the world. A pyramid scheme. It was way before any of the other pyramid schemes.
Well,
I
remember a particular liar, and it was very unpopular when I said that he was a bullshit artist and he was such a national hero to some people. But do you remember Hansi Cronje lied to us and took that box of cash from an Indian bookie and bought a horrible patch leather jacket? You know, people forget this stuff, but I don't, Jonathan, and I know you don't.
I think that really was a personal betrayal for me. You know, this was at a time when Hansi was this kind of, like, he could do no wrong in my eyes. I was, coming of age, and here was this cricket team that was taking on the world, and they looked like they were having lots of fun. You know, that they were a good team.
Sure,
and then suddenly
they were having lots of fun taking money.
Yep.
Yeah. And then allegations from the Indian police started emerging, and they named Hansi, and then I knew that's bullshit, not Hansi. You know, you can even Jonty, I would believe, but never Hansi. And then suddenly it's all true, and there was this guy who sort of went to the King Commission and basically said, "Well, tell me what you know, and then I'll tell you what I did." And then cried.
Yeah,
so
shame.
I it was a sort of a personal betrayal, and I think the tragedy of the story is that he died young and never really had a chance to redeem himself.
Yeah.
Well,
I feel like the ICC was a bit harsh on poor Hansi. You know, I feel like they could have let him play cricket afterwards. He should have been suspended for like a year or two and let him come back.
I wish I cared. I didn't then. I don't know. What I do care about, and you bring this up, you say the 16 days of crocodile tears. The number of times I've had conversations with people about the 16 days of activism and how annoyed they are, particularly women, with this patronizing nonsense of the government saying we're going to set aside these days to bring awareness to this big problem of gender-based violence. Never does anything.
Yep.
It continues to be bullshit, but they trot it out every year.
Yeah. And, sort of stop telling us what you're going to do and start showing us what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of chapters that made me angry writing, and that was one of them, because it really, is bullshit. It's and it's just become so formulaic and so predictable. And, they really kind of all they're interested in is trotting out the cliches.
Speaking of cliches, we had a conversation on the show earlier this morning about the picture of Madiba behind me. I like it. I happen to have the original at home. And there are two bullshit stories told about Madiba. The first one by people pre-94 that he was a terrorist and that we should never have trusted him in the first place. And then post-94, you got a whole lot of people trying to rewrite history and revise history with him as the villain, calling him a sellout. I think it's important that we establish these bullshit things before they actually become history.
Right. Yeah. So I did actually look at that, and so I looked at there was actually a couple of fibs in the book about him. The one is whether he is whether he was a saint, whether he was a sinner, and whether he was a sellout. And I sort of decided that he was none of those, and
right.
Just a human kind of flesh and blood being who had flaws, political flaws, personal flaws, but actually a remarkable human being who was very brave and did brave things.
Mm-hmm.
And to label him kind of one of those is not true to his legacy, and it's not true to the country's legacy. He really did stand up, and he sacrificed, and he wasn't a pushover. He stood up to de Klerk, and he stood up to the National Party. He kind of did remarkable things, and I can understand young people frustrated, believing that the compromise was a compromise too far, and that he should have negotiated kind of with a carrot, not with a stick, not a carrot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also, we're looking at history through that prism, but we need to look at history through the context of what was going on at that time.
Which is why sometimes I find it difficult having conversation with people younger than me about some of the things that happened during.
Careful, Jack. You're sounding like an old man now.
I don't care, because the truth of the matter is, if you were to put any of the people that call Mandela a sellout in his shoes at that time,
They would have been worse.
they would have been absolutely worse. Absolutely worse.
I'm interested also, you bring up a fairly serious thing, that he's having a bit of a renaissance at the moment, and I chose the word renaissance on purpose, Thabo Mbeki. But he did some pretty awful things, and one of those things was the HIV/AIDS controversy, the fact that he wasn't keen to hand out antiretrovirals, possibly cost the lives of at least a few 100,000, perhaps even millions of South Africans who might have got treatment. He and his then minister, Manto Shabalala Msimang.
Yeah, you
Remember,
can never forget that lady.
I don't forget, but some people seem to have very short memories on this front, and that was a bullshit thing.
Yeah, I think that was one of that's been one of the darkest chapters in our post-democracy era. And I think he has, a lot to answer for. If we talk about legacies, we should never forget that about him. And that was one of the other chapters that made me very angry. I mean, we have forgotten that whole Virodine scandal, where they trotted out this young scientist who claimed to kind of have the cure for AIDS. And he just didn't follow the science. And there was a doctor, somebody doing his doctorate, who worked out that he was responsible for 350,000 deaths, or his AIDS policy or lack of policy was. And then people say, well, that's quite a conservative estimate. But yes, that was a terrible time in our country, and we have forgotten about I was a sort of journalist covering that in the late 1990s, early 2000s, and it was, people were just dying, and they didn't have to.
Well, someone who never died and was meant to was Shabir Sheikh, and he also had a bullshit story about that. He's been alive how many years now and still counting?
Yeah, 15 and going strong. Yeah.
Shame. And I remember we all said our goodbyes. We were like, poor man, he's not going to make it until December. He did.
And then he's released on medical parole. After being released 3 months later, he's hitting some poor person on a golf course,
Yeah. Yeah.
Jonathan, the other story, this Dr. Pello Jordan issue. And people make a big deal of this in South Africa. For some reason, we consider a fake degree to be a much bigger scandal than many other things. We've got that Dr. Matthews story, which was last year, got everybody all riled up. But when Pello Jordan was revealed not to have been Dr. Pello Jordan, people were really upset.
Yeah. And and I feel quite sorry for him. I think it started off as a little misunderstanding where he had been actually in the office with Ruth First, and there was a bomb that killed Ruth, and he was injured. And there was a report by a newsletter called Africa Confidential that referred to him as Dr. Pello Jordan. And I think then that's how it gained steam. And he just never, I think, it's nice to have a little title in front of your name that gives you confidence. It does all sorts of things to your ego.
But it's not let's just be clear. I mean, there's a huge difference between a PhD and a medical degree. And for some reason, people in this country confuse the two, and they think, oh, well, if you call yourself a doctor and you're not, then you're not going to be able to operate on me. But a PhD doesn't operate anyway, everybody. Let's just remember that.
Yeah. So I think he just got caught up in all of that. But he, when he was confronted, there was a journalist at the Sunday Times who kind of got a tip that he never actually had a doctorate. He just didn't back down, and I think that was ultimately his undoing. And I think the lesson is, own up, don't run away from your lies. And I agree with you. I think in the sort of scale of lying, it's not kind of as dangerous as sort of saying that
Well,
HIV doesn't cause AIDS.
Yeah, it's not
But
even as dangerous as starting a website during COVID for PPE and charging the government millions, and then being the health minister at the same time. I mean, because that's pretty much worse on every front. Jonathan, I want to ask you about some other stuff that you've done, because you're such an accomplished man, and I love this book, and I encourage people to buy it and read it. But you also have worked as a reporter for many years, and you've written a biography about Craig Williamson. I was at Lily's Leaf the other day, and his name came up.
Oh,
and then Pravin Gordon, and we'll get to Pravin in a minute. But Craig Williamson, I mean, this was the guy who was a spy and assassin for the security branch back in the 1980s. Has that book been reviewed, updated? Is Craig Williamson still going strong? What do we know about what's happened since the book was published?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question, because I'm fascinated by him and still fascinated by him. He had sort of gone off into the sort of democratic sunset, never having got his upcomings. And the only real news element was when the Swedish Prime Minister's the investigation into his assassination, Olof Palme. There was always a question mark whether Williamson had been involved in that assassination. And it was about 2 or 3 years ago, they finally closed the case, and they said no, it was a kind of a lone gunman who. But he's still working, not working. Sorry, he's still living in I think the northern suburbs of Johannesburg. He's still seen out and about. He still gets on with his life. His wife is a psychiatrist. He's kind of sailed into South Africa with blood on his hands, but with no remorse, no repentance. No comeuppance for him.
Sure. And Pravin Gordon, I mean, you talk about bullshit. This guy is an expert in bullshit. And he has managed to bullshit us that he was the most competent and safe and secure member of government, and he was the guy we could trust. He was pretty much involved in almost every incidence of state capture in the various parastatals, or at very least, if you don't want to blame him for that, we can blame him for almost all of them falling to pieces.
Yeah, when the sort of the book about him, it was a biography, and it was written when his star was, he was the face of states of resistance against state capture. So it was quite a sort of he had just been appointed in Cyril's cabinet. There was a lot of sort of optimism. There was a lot of feelings that, well, he's been this face of the resistance against state capture, and now we're going to see what he can do. And maybe in his defense a little bit, he inherited a mess. I think we don't always acknowledge the reality of what happened to those institutions. They were completely looted, and there was just the culture of corruption that ran right through it. And I think there was still, and there still are, sort of corrupt people around, in those organizations, in the cabinet, in all spheres of government. And so it was quite disappointing to see that what happened.
It turns out that he was just competent at being crooked, as opposed to being incompetent at being crooked, like so many other people in government.
Which is why I wanted to find out, when you were doing the research, putting together his autobiography, his biography. I almost said, why did I say autobiography?
No, because he wouldn't have written that.
Yeah, he wouldn't have. When you're doing the research, was there any indication that he was, for the lack of a better term, a shady character?
Are you talking about Craig Williamson or
no, Pravin?
In fact, the opposite. We spoke to a lot of people who had. I wrote it with somebody, and we spoke to a lot of people who had grown up with Pravin and had been involved in the the sort of anti-apartheid organizations, and then spoke to people at SARS, and he turned SARS around. He really did at that time kind of turn it into this very efficient organization, and people felt that he was incorruptible, that he was sort of anybody, any politician that was honest, they pointed to him. So there's no indication that he was corrupt.
Look, I mean, I don't think he's the worst. I just think he's probably good at getting things done. So it's just unfortunate that he's part of a machine that has done so much damage. Now, it's interesting with the elections next week. A lot of people are asking, do you think that the ANC is going to steal this election with some bullshit? Any theories around that? Or any of the opposition parties? Any of them guilty of bullshit? They must be.
Yeah, I think that all these bills that are being rushed to be signed, I think that is bullshit. I think that's all electioneering. I think the NHI is bullshit. I think a lot of what we're going to hear is bullshit. A lot of what we've heard is bullshit. And it's time to turn on our bullshit detectors. But I don't think that the election is going to be stolen. I don't think, I think we've got a very strong IEC. The opposition is not weak. They will stand up to those sorts of things. But I think there will be surprises. I think we're going to see a lot of surprises.
Jonathan, by your estimation, given that you wrote this book, what goes into making a really good bullshit story?
I think there must be a little bit of truth. So there must be some sort of, kind of element of believability in it.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose it's like magician. You want people to like think, well, how the hell did that happen? But for example, this prophet who resurrected poor Elliot, it was just smoke and mirrors. Here he was. He claimed that he could resurrect a person from the dead, which must be the ultimate lie. And everybody believed him, and they believed what they thought they saw. And I suppose that if you have the confidence to kind of get up and say, I'm going to perform all these miracles, I think confidence goes a long way in selling bullshit. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, and congrats on the book. It is your 6th, isn't it?
My 6th, yeah.
6th book. Amazing. Yeah. It's called Bullshit, 50 Fibs That Made South Africa. There's something to make people proud of our country. Thank you, Jonathan Ancer. Very nice to see you. Very good. Wow, that's quite a lot of bullshit for one morning.
Yeah, quite a bit. I hope we also cleared up a few things as well.
We covered a lot of territory there, but there's so much stuff that we didn't get to. I mean, this country seems to be chock full when we get to like accounting for our bullshit. It seems like we're just not going to run out of any stuff anytime soon.
Quite a bit. Quite a bit.
Are you worried about any bullshit ahead of the elections? We only got a week to go.
Yeah. Do you know what? Genuinely, I'm concerned about what's going to happen after the election. There are a couple of these political parties who don't seem like they'll be gracious losers.
Oh no! So you can't mean that.
Yeah, no. That is what has me worrying.
No,
because somebody's going to see the results and think, "Aibo, this isn't what is going on." You know what I mean? Well, we heard about fraudulent signatures at some point. So who knows? Who knows? But all I know is next week, Wednesday, I'm going to be up bright and early, going to go vote. I want to actually go check out the Rock where they do the...
Yes, the election center.
Yes, that's where I want to be. I want to be there front and center.
That'll be more interesting on the day after the election.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to do that because I want to see it with my own 2 eyes. When the news comes down that the ANC doesn't have 50%.
What's really cool, do you think that's going to happen? it'll be really cool there for you if you get to just wander around, because all the politicians are there.
Yep.
And they are available for you to talk to them. So if you have a recording device, you could literally get the leaders of every single party in one place.
Do you know
on
what
one
I
day.
want to do? I'd love to be standing really close to Cyril when they make their official pronouncement.
Why?
I don't know. I get this funny feeling that this election is going to shock the shit out of all of us. And
Think so? I mean,
I think so.
Okay. And then what are you going to do? Call him Cupcake like that guy did?
No, he's
in
Uncle
that video?
Posey. He's Uncle Posey. Stand right next to
So
him.
what are you going to say if he goes, oh no, my iPad, someone has stolen my iPad? What will you say to him then?
No, he's going to say, no, someone has stolen my country.
My election.
Where is my...
Where's my election?
Where's
Someone
my
has stolen
election? Have you seen this?
What will you say to him?
I don't know.
If he turns to you blank-faced and goes, what happened? Like Hillary Clinton did in 2016.
Yeah, it will be like after a soccer team loses a match they were supposed to win. It's like, sir, let me get your thoughts. I am on the ground with the captain of the losing team. What went wrong?
Oh, man.
That would be hilarious.
If it goes that way. Otherwise, as many people are predicting, it will keep going exactly the same way it has for the last 30 years. Very, very small changes.
See, I don't have that amount of cynicism in me. Not just yet.
I don't know if it's cynical or if it's realistic. We'll have to see. Obviously, a big part of me is hoping that we'll have some real changes.
Yeah, same here.
Especially at the provincial level. I'm very much interested in the devolution of power down to the municipalities, the local governments. They should get the majority of the money. They should get the majority of the ability to make rules and laws at the municipal level.
Yeah.
And the national government should become something so distant that it only really affects us when we see it on the news.
Yeah, they should legit just be legislators. That's it.
Yeah.
We don't need you
We
affecting
shouldn't have to
anything
see.
else.
Obviously, as legislators, they'll make laws, but they should make a minimum of laws.
Very minimum.
And what I would like is a really fractious group of small parties who nobody has a majority. They all have to whine and bitch and moan and make alliances and argue about stuff so that no real laws get made. I've got very different desires to the average South African.
Yeah.
I want government to stay out of my life. I want as little to do with them as possible. I want less rules. I want them to have nothing to do with the economy. That would be my ideal. But that's not everyone's ideal. A lot of people who are voting ANC are hoping that they themselves will benefit from some of the things that the ANC has been doing. People who vote DA want a capable state. I'm not sure I want that. People who are voting for MK just want to cause trouble.
Yep.
People who are voting EFF want to change the state dramatically and want more state control and things. None of that appeals to me, really. So you can already tell I'm not going to be voting for one of those major parties. But,
yeah, same here.
but
I
we'll
will
see.
say this. I'm a lot closer to making up my mind about who I'm going to
Really?
vote for. Yeah. I actually know.
You should be. It's only a week to go.
Yeah. I am dead set on who I'm going to vote for provincially, though.
Yes.
You're
going to tell us now?
Yes, I'm telling you now.
Go on.
Yes.
Those guys who...
Organic Humanity Movement.
Really?
You have got my vote provincially.
Really?
Listen, it's done. It's dusted. Look, the interview we did with them kind of created a snowball effect, in my opinion, because they opened up my eyes to a couple of things during that interview. And then straight afterwards, I started investigating. I started doing my research on that party specifically. And let me tell you something, their policies are amazing. They've won my vote. It's done.
All right. So that's your provincial vote. National,
Yes,
we'll
sir.
see.
National, I'm still...
They're not really competitive.
Someone they still need to court my vote. You know what I mean? Musi, great ad, by the way.
That's worked in the last week.
Love.
Very good. All right. Well, whoever you're voting for, good. Go and vote. And if you're not voting and you didn't register, I don't think you should be able to listen to this show anymore.
Yeah, no. You're a brat.
Yeah, you're a problem. You're a problem child.
Very, very big problem child. And as I said in the first hour, will make you feel it with the flesh, Papa.
Yeah. And thank you for all the suggestions of what we should put on the set above the TV screen. We've got a couple of good ones. Taxidermy, animal, Shambok, some other pretty good ideas. If you've got any others, send them to us. We want to hear from you.
Oh my goodness, Gareth, before we wrap up. You did something so cool yesterday on Instagram.
What?
That thread of
Oh, the
thoughts.
rant.
Oh my God.
All right, let me just quickly.
Oh, I love it. You still have it?
I hope it's still here.
Please.
Let me just see. Okay, so
This is the perfect way to end the show.
this has got to do with people who get outraged online. Okay, so I said, let me
Let's
start.
get some
If you've
feelings.
ever been massively outraged by something that didn't happen to you, happened online, or didn't even happen, like with Jussie Smollett.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that, number one, you are not terribly clever. You likely have a low IQ and you can't remember your own phone number without looking it up.
Yes, sir.
2, you're performing like a theater kid who never got the main role, so you overact.
And you'll never get the main role, just so you know.
3, spending just a few minutes asking you questions about the source of your tantrum will undoubtedly reveal that you have no insights on the subject whatsoever, let alone any knowledge on just about any subject.
Because you're a bored little shit with nothing better to do.
You like this, huh?
I love it.
Number 4, you'll do anything to be noticed, acknowledged, or loved, probably because you got none of that as a child.
You could be a middle child. Who knows?
Number 5, your histrionics will never adequately compensate for a lack of charm, character, or personality, and you should stop, or you'll never be employed, enjoyed, or engaged.
Ever.
And finally, 6, the person or group that you're standing up for to represent them never asked you to represent them. In fact, they would probably be embarrassed if they ever found out that you did.
They'd beat your ass and hide the Bible if God's watching.
Nice, Kendrick. And you can't force society to need or want you by hopping onto whatever outrage is going on online. Find something useful to do. Help someone in the real world or set fire to yourself in a public park. Most of us are not interested anymore.
Yes, sir. Yes,
There we
sir.
go.
That was the greatest thing I saw on the internet yesterday. I
All
just
right,
had
thank
to
you.
make sure that you share it
Well,
with our live audience.
Occasionally there are these rants. It's worth following me on Instagram.
Yep.
GR Cliff. You can also follow the show on Instagram. We're always posting new stuff. Sivan Gessi was going on about erections and Fong Kong hard-on medicine on Monday.
Yeah.
If you're not listening to and watching and subscribing to this show, then you really are missing out.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jack Motlanthe. We will not see you next Wednesday because it's election day.
Yep.
But we will be back with this show live on Friday morning, and tomorrow, a burning platform on the podcast party at 7.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.